pulsing heartbeat beneath the chatter of 1,000 conversations and the rustle of shopping bags. For 16-year-old Simone, it was the soundtrack of freedom. The pretzel in her hand was warm, its salt a perfect contrast to the sugary smell of cinnamon almonds that wafted from the food court. She was with her friends, a constellation of easy laughter and shared glances, and for that moment, she was gloriously, unremarkably happy. The world was exactly as it should be. The change began as a shift in the light, a shadow falling across their little son. A security guard, a man whose uniform seemed to strain against his bulk, altered his path to mirror theirs. His name tag read Boyd. His eyes were not scanning the crowd. They were fixed on Simone with a flat, assessing weight. The laughter among her friends stuttered and died. A coldness seeped into Simone's stomach, the pretzel turning to clay in her hand. She consciously schooled her face into neutrality, a mask of polite inquiry. "Can I help you, officer?" Her voice was calm, respectful, just as her mother had taught her to speak to authority. "We've had some complaints," Boyd stated. The phrase is a blunt instrument, devoid of detail, designed to stifle questions. "Complaints about what?" Leah, Simone's best friend, stepped forward, her voice tinged with protective indignation. "We're just walking. Look around." She gestured at the bustling Saturday crowd, at other groups of teens who were louder, more sprawling. Boyd ignored her. His focus remained a liaison Simon knew. "Come with me." It was not an invitation, it was a command. Before Simone could formulate another word, his hand shot out. It was not a guiding touch. It was a full-handed clamp around the fleshy part of her upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft terry of her new hoodie. A shockwave of pain and violation shot through her. The pretzel fell from her grasp, hitting the polished floor with a soft, pathetic thud. Salt scattering like shattered glass. Time did not slow. It fractured. The cheerful mall music warped into a discordant hum. The faces of the shoppers, once a blur, sharpened into individual portraits of curiosity, shock, or averted eyes. She saw her friends' mouths moving, their protests muffled as if she was submerged in water. She was no longer Simone. She was a spectacle, a public correction in progress, a lesson from her mother, drilled deep over years of subtle warnings, surfaced through the panic. Do not give them the performance they expect. Do not struggle. Do not shout. Do not become the angry black girl that would justify his force in every onlooker's mind. She went rigid, not with resistance, but with a profound, willful stillness. She became a statue of silent objection, forcing him to drag not a flailing teen, but a dead weight of dignity. Each step he pulled her was a grotesque pantomime, her sneakers squeaking a feeble protest against the tile. The journey to the back offices felt endless, a walk of shame under the sterile fluorescent lights. The room he put her in was a sterile, windowless cube, a single table, 2 chairs, beige walls that seemed to absorb sound. The door clicked shut with a sound of terrifying finality. Alone, the full weight of the humiliation crashed down. The phantom sensation of his grip burned on her arm. She could still feel the weight of all those stairs. She wrapped her arms around herself, clutching the spot he had held, and focused on her breathing, in, out. She would not cry. She would not give this room that victory. She fixed her eyes on a hairline crack in the paint, a tiny, imperfect river on a bland landscape. She thought of her mother's face, the calm, fierce intelligence in her eyes. That thought was the only anchor in a sea of shame. Across the mall, in the linens department of a large store, Kendra was comparing thread counts. Her mind, even on a Saturday, operated with a project manager's precision. Her phone, buried in her purse, buzzed once, then again. Then it erupted into a frantic, persistent vibration. Annoyed, she retrieved it. Leah's name flashed, followed by a torrent of text messages that seemed to bleed panic through the screen. Aunt Kay? Security has Simone. They grabbed her. They're dragging her. Back offices near food court. Help the world did not slow. It sharpened to a deadly point. The soft towels, the music, the woman debating fabric softener beside her Orlovich, was instantly categorized as irrelevant noise. A maternal fury, white-hot and primal, ignited in her chest, but she did not let it rule her. She transformed it into fuel, compressing it into a diamond-hard focus. This was a critical incident. She was the first and only responder. She did not run. Running was undignified and inefficient. She walked. Her stride became long, purposeful, her heels striking the tile with a sound that was both measured and ominous. Shoppers instinctively parted before her. Her focus was a palpable force field. Her mind raced ahead, building a case file from thin air. Points of failure: unwarranted physical contact, detention of a minor. Probable cause: none. Evidence: witnesses, the friends. Potential evidence: mall surveillance. Chain of command: guard, supervisor, corporate. Desired outcome: immediate release, preservation of evidence, institutional accountability. She was not just a mother, she was a strategist entering a hostile boardroom. The security desk was manned by a young woman scrolling on her phone. "I need the manager in charge of security, immediately." Kendra's voice was low, devoid of panic, layered with an authority that tolerated no delay. The young woman looked up, bored. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, your employee has unlawfully detained my minor daughter. I will speak with his supervisor and the manager of this facility, in that order, right now. If they are not here in 60 seconds, my next call is to the police to report a kidnapping." The words were delivered with icy, surgical calm. The clerk's eyes widened. She fumbled for the phone. Boyd emerged from a back hallway. His demeanor was still one of wary authority, expecting a parent he could placate with vague assurances about safety and rules. "Ma'am, your daughter was part of a disruptive group. We'd just get into the bottom of it." Kendra took one deliberate step forward, crossing into his personal space. She was shorter, but she seemed to expand, to tower. Her eyes locked onto his, and in them he saw not hysteria, but a cold, analytical fury that was far more frightening. "You physically assaulted my child," she stated, each word a chip of ice. "You will not speak to me about disruption. You will take me to her. Now, then you will provide me, in writing, the specific mall policy that authorizes the use of force on a minor for the crime of walking while black. You will also provide the incident report you are required to file any time you lay hands on a civilian, which I assume you have already completed, as per your training." She paused, letting the procedural trap snap shut in his mind. "If that report does not exist, you have compounded your misconduct with a failure of protocol." Boyd's face lost its color. The script he knew had been incinerated. Wordlessly, he turned and led her down the hall. When Kendra opened the door to the small room, Simone's magnificent composure finally fit. A single, stark tear escaped, tracing a path through her shock. "Mom," the word was a sob, a plea, a confession of utter vulnerability. Kendra crossed the room in 2 strides, gathering her daughter into her arms. She held her tightly, one hand cradling her head, whispering into her hair, "I am here, you're safe. Do not say a word." It was both a comfort and a critical directive. Do not give them any more of your voice. She then turned, placing her own body as a physical and psychological barrier between Simone and the guard. The manager, a man named Evan, smelling of stale coffee and low-grade stress, arrived. Kendra stood silent and utterly still as Boyd recited his sanitized version. A complaint about a rowdy group, Simone identified as the instigator, a perceived resistance that necessitated a physical escort. He used a passive voice. Things had happened. Actions were taken. When he finished, Kendra began. Her voice was calm, forensic, the voice of a closing argument. "Let me reconstruct the event based on evidence, not perception. At approximately 2:20 p.m., Officer Boyd, based on an unspecified and unverified complaint, singled out my daughter, Simone Johnson, from a group of 4 minors. Without witnessing any illegal activity, without issuing a verbal warning to the group, he proceeded to apply physical force, a full hand grip on her upper arm, and physically removed her from a public area, causing a public scene and inflicting emotional distress. He then placed her in solitary confinement in a locked room, a minor, without a parent, guardian, or legal representative present. He has presented 0 evidence of a crime. This is not security. This is the profiling and false imprisonment of a child." Evans began to sputter about mall policy and the need to maintain a safe environment. Kendra didn't raise her voice. She simply amplified the pressure, shifting from the moral to the legal. "Your policy is subordinate to state law. My daughter is leaving with me now. However, this incident triggers several mandatory next steps. You will immediately sequester and preserve all digital surveillance footage from every camera with a sightline to the Grand Court, the adjacent corridors, and this office hallway, from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. today. You will provide me with a copy of the filed complaint log that initiated this sequence. You will also provide the full name and state security license number for Officer Boyd, as I will be filing a formal complaint with the licensing board regarding his conduct and his fitness to hold a position of authority. She took a breath, her gaze never leaving Evans's face. Finally, I will be drafting a summary for your corporate legal department, the parent company of this mall, and our local chapter of the NAACP, detailing this incident and the apparent pattern of bias it represents. Your cooperation now will determine whether this speech is handled as a regrettable operational failure or as a formal legal and public relations liability. The choice is yours. The silence in the room was profound. Evans looked from Kendra's unblinking face to Boyd's sweat-sheened one. The power had not been seized with violence, but dismantled with the terrifying, impeccable logic of consequence. We can certainly preserve the footage," Evans stammered. There may have been a misunderstanding in the level of response. Kendra did not acknowledge this offered olive branch. A misunderstanding was not an apology, it was an excuse. She turned to Simone, her voice softening only by a degree. "Do you have everything, baby?" Simone, who had just witnessed her mother deconstruct an oppressive system with words alone, nodded, mute with awe. Kendra guided her out of the room, down the hall, past the security desk where the clerk now stared openly. Faye did not look back. The transition from the sterile, humming back corridors to the vibrant, noisy mall was jarring. The pop music now sounded grotesque, a mockery. Simone kept her eyes fixed on the exit doors ahead, a beacon. They did not speak until they were inside the car, the doors shut, locking out the world. Only then, in the familiar, quiet capsule of their vehicle, did the dam break. Simon's body was racked with sobs, the delayed shock of the trauma releasing in violent waves. Kendra sat silently, a hand resting on her daughter's heaving back, her own jaw clenched so tight it ached. She let the storm pass. When the tears subsided into hiccuping breaths, Simone whispered, her voice raw, "He just grabbed me, out of nowhere, for nothing." "I know," Kendra said, her voice thick with the shared, ancient pain. "And you did everything perfectly. You were calm, you were still. He didn't give him a single reason, because he didn't have one to begin with. He showed everyone exactly who he was." Simone looked at her mother, her eyes red and searching. How did you know all those things to say? The licenses, the policies, all that?" Kendra sighed, a long, weary exhalation that carried the weight of history. "Because, my love, there are two rule books. One is the one they teach everyone in school, about following rules and being polite. The other one, the secret one, is the one we have to learn by heart just to walk through the world. It's the rule book they use when they see your skin and your age and your clothes, and decide you're a threat before you've even spoken." She started the car, but let it idle. "What I did in there, I wasn't just being your mom, I was speaking their language. The language of liability, of procedure, of cold, hard facts, and colder, harder consequences. It's the only language that kind of thoughtless power understands. Anger they can dismiss. A lawsuit, a licensing investigation, a corporate scandal. And that they have to listen to." She pulled out of the parking space, the mall shrinking in the rearview mirror. "We are going home. You are going to take a long shower. You are going to put on your softest pajamas. And tomorrow, we are going to sit at the kitchen table and we are going to write those letters. We will formally request that footage. We will file that complaint, not because it will undo what happened to you today, not because it will change that man's heart, but because you need to know, in your bones, that you do not have to stand there and take it, that there is a path, a difficult, meticulous path, to hold them accountable. You document everything. You speak with precision. You use their own systems against their own biases. That is your power. It's not as loud as a scream, Simone, but it is infinitely heavier, and it lasts much, much longer." The following morning, the kitchen table was transformed. The cheerful weekend clutter was gone. In its place, a legal pad, 2 pens, a fresh notebook, a laptop, and 2 mugs of strong tea. This was no longer a kitchen. It was a command center. "First," Kendra said, her project manager persona fully engaged, "we document our account. While it's fresh, every detail." She pushed the notebook toward Simone. "Write it all. What you saw, what you heard, what you felt. Times, descriptions of people, exact words, if you can remember them. Don't editorialize. Just facts. Simone picked up the pen, her hand trembling slightly. Starting felt impossible. The event was a chaotic storm in her mind. Start with the pretzel, Kendra said gently, reading her hesitation. Start with the moment before. Establish the normal. Then document the rupture. So Simone wrote. She wrote about the warmth of the dough, the coarse salt, the bass line of the music thumping in her chest. She wrote about the shadow falling, the texture of Boyd's uniform up close, the specific, startling pain of his fingers. She wrote about the sound her pretzel made, hitting the floor, a small, insignificant sound that marked the end of her innocent afternoon. The act of writing was excruciating, but with each sentence, the event moved from a sensory tornado inside her skull to ordered lines on a page. It became a case study, not just a trauma. While Simone wrote, Kendra worked. She found the corporate structure of the mall's management company. She located the state's website for security guard licensing and the specific statutes governing citizen detention. She drafted a bullet point timeline. She did not seethe. She strategized. This was the second, more critical part of the lesson, transforming raw hurt into actionable intelligence. After an hour, Simone slid the notebook across the table. Kendra read it, her face a mask of concentration that barely concealed the storm beneath. She looked up, her eyes glistening but her voice steady. This is excellent. This is your truth, codified. Now, we build the framework around it. For the next 2 hours, they crafted the letters together. Kendra insisted Simone be involved in every phrase. The letter to the mall's management was not an emotional plea. It was a concise, referenced report. It attached Simone's written statement. It cited the time, location, and employees involved. It quoted the state code regarding the detention of minors. It requested the preserved surveillance footage and a copy of the complaint log. It concluded by stating their intent to file a formal complaint with the state licensing board and to share the documented incident with relevant civil rights organizations to assess patterns of bias. We are not asking for an apology, Kendra explained. Apologies are cheap and forgettable. We are demanding a procedural audit and a documented correction. We are creating a paper trail so wide they cannot step around it. The letter to the state licensing board was more technical, focusing on Boyd's conduct against the standards of his profession. Kendra showed Simone how to look up his license number using the public database. This makes it real for him, Kendra said. A complaint on his permanent record. It impacts his livelihood. This is about consequence, not revenge. There is a difference. Simone felt a strange, sobering power in that. This wasn't about yelling back. It was about holding a mirror up to the system until it was forced to see its own distortion. The final step was the hardest. Kendra opened the website for the local NAACP chapter. We are sending them a summary, she said. Not because we expect them to swoop in and save us, but because data matters. Your story is a data point. When they see 10, 50, 100 data points from this same mall, a pattern emerges. That pattern has power we never could alone. Simone hesitated. Does this make it public? Kendra put a hand over hers. It makes it historical. It ensures you are not just a girl it happened to, but a witness who testified, who were moving from the background to the record. They printed the letters, signed them, made copies. The act of putting them in envelopes felt solemn, significant. Now Kendra said, we wait, but we wait actively. She helped Simone draft a script for a follow-up phone call in 1 week, if they received no response. She taught her the polite, persistent language of bureaucratic follow-up. You must become the most inconvenient, professional, by-the-book problem they have ever encountered. The response came not from the mail, but via a phone call 3 days later. The caller ID showed the mall's main number. Kendra put it on speaker. It was a woman from the corporate legal department, her voice slick with practiced conciliation. She offered profuse apologies for the misunderstanding and the unfortunate experience. She assured them the involved employee had been retrained. She offered a gift card as a gesture of goodwill. Kendra listened silently, letting the woman finish her rehearsed spiel. Then she spoke. Thank you for your call. We have received no documentation regarding the preservation of the footage, the complaint log, or the details of the retraining. Our letters outlined specific requests for information and procedural review. Until we receive written responses to those specific points, we cannot consider the matter resolved. The gift card is declined. Please direct all further communication in writing, as we are documenting this process. There was a stunned silence on the other end before the woman stammered in agreement. Simone watched, wide-eyed. The offer of a gift card had, for a second, felt like vindication. But her mother had rejected it effortlessly, seeing it for what it was, a cheap silencer. "Retrained?" Simone asked after the call ended. Kendra's smile was thin, a meaningless word. "It changes nothing. We are not looking for them to punish a man. We are looking for them to change a policy. To add a clause about de-escalation before physical contact. To require a supervisor's approval for detaining a minor. That is the only thing that might protect the next girl." Weeks passed. A formal, bland letter arrived from corporate, finally enclosing a copy of a revised public interaction policy that included more steps before physical intervention. It was heavily legalese, but the change was there. A separate letter confirmed the security footage had been preserved for the required period. There was no further word from the licensing board, but Kendra explained that process was slow and often confidential. The victory was not dramatic. No one was fired. No news crews arrived. But something had shifted. A month later, Simone had to return to the mall to exchange a pair of shoes. The thought filled her with a low-grade dread. She asked her mother to come, but Kendra shook her head. "You go. You walk tall. You buy your shoes. You leave. You reclaim your space. The work we did at that table was so you could walk back in there, not without fear, but with authority." Simone went, her heart a drum in her chest. As she walked through the same gleaming corridors, the memories threatened to overwhelm her. But then she saw something. A different security guard, a woman, was talking calmly to a group of boisterous teens near the fountain. The guard's hands were at her sides. She was talking, not touching. It was a small thing. It was everything. She finished her errand. As she walked back to the car, she saw him, Boyd. He was patrolling near a department store entrance. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. A flicker of something recognition, perhaps a shade of new wariness passed over his face before he looked away, adjusting his belt. He did not speak to her. He did not look at her again. In that moment, Simon understood the true outcome. He hadn't been made to see her humanity. It was likely beyond the entire system, but he had been made to see her consequence. He had been forced to register that she was not anonymous, not powerless, and that her story could ripple into his world in ways that demanded paperwork, scrutiny, and change. She was a person who could generate a file. Driving home, the weight in her chest felt different. It was no longer just the heavy stone of humiliation. It was now the balanced, formidable weight of knowledge. Her mother had taught her that the world had a hidden curriculum of injustice. Yes, but more importantly, she had taught her that there was a hidden syllabus of resistance to match it, line for line. It was a syllabus written in the language of law, of policy, of cold, hard documentation. It required patience, precision, and a steeliness of spirit that no anger could provide. Simone had lost her naive comfort in the world that day in the mall. But in its place, her mother had handed her something far more durable, the blueprints for her own defense, and the quiet, unassailable power of a girl who now knew how to write her own story into the record, ensuring she would never again be just a girl being dragged away, but a fact to be reckoned with. The lesson was complete. The cost of the lesson had been a piece of her innocence. The value of the lesson was the rest of her life.